Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Fault Line. This episode is a terrific conversation with an author and deep thinker about leadership, Julie McManus, who talks about, the reflection and how leaders might see themselves in the mirror. And before we transition into the conversation we had with her, Kim, any sort of preflections or thoughts on where this conversation is going and what our listeners should be paying attention to?
Yeah. So first, you'll hear about this in the episode, but I had the opportunity to meet Julie at a B2B marketing expo down in Miami a few months ago. And she made everybody in the audience take a look at their reflection. Her book is called The Leadership Mirror. And it really is about having self awareness as a leader and making sure that you're delivering the message you actually want to deliver to the teams that you lead. So I hope you all enjoy.
Thanks. Let's get right into it. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of the Fault Line podcast. I'm here with my partner in crime, Kim Scribner, and we've got a terrific guest this week, Julie McManus, who I'm looking forward to this conversation because I want to dive into all of her expertise, topics, and perspective on leadership. So, Julie, maybe give us a couple of words of introduction just to set the context for the folks who listen in, and then we'll jump right into our conversation.
Sure. My name is Julie McManus. I'm the author of The Leadership Mirror. I've had the distinct pleasure of leading and working and training leaders on 5 different continents, from diamond mines in Botswana, gold mines in Peru, Africa. I've worked there as well, and I just it's just such a pleasure to work with leaders who want to grow and develop. So I'm happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. We enjoy having guests like you on and always learn stuff from you folks. So,
Thank you.
Kim, you want to kick us off? You got any questions you want to start us off with?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll just say, picking on a keyword that Julie just said, leaders who want to get
Yeah.
better, which we don't
Yes.
always encounter in the wild, but we hope we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
That's definitely a key piece of ensuring that this kind of work that we all do as leadership coaches and consultants goes a long way. There's a desire perspective. So tell us a little bit about the book. It's called The Leadership Mirror. Why is looking in the mirror an important part of the coaching you do?
I think it's so leadership mirror. It's important because I think a lot of times, I think, first of all, I think leadership is broken. I think it's broken in the US and I think it's broken throughout the world. And I think it's broken because a lot of times we want to attribute fault to someone else. We want to attribute fault to lazy employees, or we want to attribute fault to um, uh, untrained employees, those types of things. And what the book does is it encourages leaders to look in the mirror, look inward, lead outward. Because with all my experiences, a lot of times the question is, so what did or didn't you do to train the employees? What processes did you create that are barriers and problems and unclear? What communication did you provide that wasn't necessarily clear enough to get the outcome? And if we take a look back at ourselves and how we contributed and what we created or what we did or didn't do, then I think it's a game changer for a lot of leaders, because then they're like, oh yeah, I sent a vague email and I didn't get what I wanted.
Mhm.
Wow, go figure, type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's very important to really understand how you contributed to the situation you're in.
Yeah. There's so and tell the story of when Julie and I met real quick, because she asked that we were at a B2B conference down in Miami. This is a couple of months back, and she asked us all to pull out our cell phones and put it on selfie mode and look at ourselves. We didn't have mirrors laying around, and she asked us all what we saw. And in my mind, what I saw was skepticism. And the more I played back that just exercise that she had us do in a few seconds, I thought about, well, if I look skeptical when I'm giving feedback or coaching or things like that, how terrible is that for the person on the other side of that feedback? So just even that small little sliver is very useful. Gary, I'm curious what you think about that.
Well, I think, one of the provocative things in this conversation, and Julie, I'm going to want your perspective on this, is there are a lot of times when people look at the performance of an organization and sit in a leadership role, a role of some positional authority, and start to sort of uh, cast judgment on the people who are supposed to be executing.
Hmm.
And I think, what I took away from your work, Julie, is oftentimes it's not that simple. It's not a team upgrade, or there may be opportunities for that, but you talk about leadership patterns, and you
Hmm.
touched on a few of the variables just a little while ago, like a vague email and this, that, and the other. I'm curious how, if we think through this pattern approach, that can actually contribute to falling short of expectations or aspirations.
Agreed.
Yeah. The expectations word is big for me. So as I was reading the beginning of the book, there's a story of Dominique and David. And I think Dominique is the manager and David is the person that works for her. And what came through in that story for me was they were both kind of wrong because Dominique sends a vague email, like Gary just talking about. But David also doesn't ask for any more specifics. And
Correct.
so the communication breakdown between the two of them leads to missing expectations from both sides,
Hmm.
to your point, Gary.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and
And I
people work themselves into a groove of these behaviors.
Yes, because if David goes to Dominique regularly and Dominique is not listening, is not clarifying, has had this uh, skeptical face when
Yes.
he's asking her questions, then David's just going to stop asking the questions, or he's just going to make assumptions, or he's going to, continue to not deliver. And it's definitely a two-way street, and it takes some tenacity on the part of the employees to own their part of it and get what they need in order to deliver the results.
Yeah. And go ahead, Kim.
There was a this is the pleasure of doing this for so long together is he could tell when I'm about to say words. So there was a study that I was talking with another colleague about. It's done Q4 last year. And it was 118 CEOs. So small study, but I'm going to just quote two things to you guys from it because I think it makes sense in the context of this conversation. It says 71% rated account expansion as critical for hitting their growth targets. So, existing
Mhm.
accounts, expanding them. Only 49% said that they were confident that their team could actually execute on that. So you've got a gap, right? You got 20 something point gap between those two things. But what doesn't come out in this study is some of what you talk about in your book and just this theory along is that what are we as the executives doing to help close that gap rather than just pointing blame?
Correct. Yeah. What systems and processes have we built together with the employees? And I talked about this in Miami as well. They're
Mhm.
the ones that know the jobs the best. Have we gone to them and says, "What are your blockers for signing a new account?" Is it a software issue? Is it you have to jump through 15 hoops in order to get that account signed? Is it you don't have the right software? We don't have a good deck to present to your clients, and really engaging those employees and say, we want to get to, you know, we need to be at this number. Well, so what's stopping you from doing that? They know best. And so that's always my default is to make sure we go to those top performers and find out what it is that are the blockers from them doing, meeting the numbers.
And you touched on something I think is crucial, Julie, which is the ability of leaders to ask questions rather than just provide answers,
Hmm.
right? And we tend to think, and there's a lot of, especially in a culture like the US, there's a lot of great individual myth that's out
Hmm.
there when that conditions people to think the great leader has the answer. And it's, for me, that's a a false prophet or a false image in some ways, because great leaders understand the limits of their, own bandwidth and experience, and are the ones who can leverage the input and contributions of so many different people.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, as you think through some of this, and you've talked about some of these patterns of leadership and people conditioning their teams into certain things, how we start to sort of challenge those myths and establish a comfort level trying new behaviors.
Baby steps for sure, because you
Daily
can't,
exercise.
huh?
Daily exercise.
Yeah, as a leader, you can't automatically turn on a switch that says, I'm going to be caring and engaging, and I'm going to listen more, and I'm going to do all these things. It's kind of this, and vulnerability is overused, but it's really saying, hey, I don't have the answers. I do want to, engage you differently. I need your help. And then really listening to the feedback, because a lot of times leaders will say, well, I want your help, and then they're multitasking, they're not listening. Get the feedback and make one small change that shows that you're listening, and if you need, then make another. But if you've been a leader that's behaved a certain way for so many years, and all of a sudden you're going to be warm and fuzzy and huggy and these types of things, there you're going to get a revolt, right? So it's critical that these changes happen slowly, but also that you're transparent about it, and either find a trusted employee and a formal leader, a peer, and be open and honest. I want to get better at X. And if I'm not getting better at X, then, not publicly, but privately, let me know that I'm falling back. Because a lot of times we go to a training class, we read a book, we're just like, oh, yeah, 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 I'm going to do all these things. But we always go back to this default behavior. So,
You reminded me of years ago when I first read Turn the Ship Around. And one of the things that David Marquette says in that book is tell your team you're going to start talking to them differently before you just leap into intent-based leadership, right?
yeah,
Because having read that at some point, this is when I was leading a DevOps team, and I started talking differently, and they were looking at me like, "Why are you talking like that?" Right? So your
absolutely.
team will know right away, and
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah, bring them on board to your challenges and opportunities.
Yes, they watch you far more than I think most leaders realize. So,
And there's a power in having the self-awareness and humility
mhm,
to acknowledge, hey, I've got opportunities to grow and evolve.
yes,
And for me, that's always an opportunity, as well as you mentioned, people are paying attention, to role model that development behavior.
absolutely.
And, you know, I think there's a little secret sauce element of taking that, and bolting it to the request for help. And you touched on this well. For me, that's a superpower. The more you can ask people to help you out, the
Yes.
more leverage you're going to get as a
Mhm.
team.
Yeah.
um, and again, it's this myth that, great leaders are these, individualists, and they've got all the answers. And the reality is, when you ask somebody for help, you're actually saying to them, I think you're important and you can contribute something. There's a validation element there that for many people at the execution level in an organization, may go sort of untapped under
Mhm.
certain types of leaders, but
Yes.
when it is tapped, expands what the capability of the team is. And I'm curious, does
Yeah.
that resonate with you, or would you want to modify and evolve that sort of assertion?
No, I absolutely agree with you, Gary. They truly know best, and people don't wake up in the morning and say, "I'm gonna suck today." Okay? They get in, and a
There might be
process
a
is
small percentage of people that do.
well, so okay, so yes, some small percentage of people, but most people don't. But they get in and the system is lagging, it's sluggish, they've got too many keystrokes, another layer of bureaucracy has been added, and I've gotta get this person's signature and this person's signature, and half of my life was spent in consulting, and I did hard skills training. And I didn't know how to mine. I didn't know how to make rubber, But what I did know is to talk to those top performers and it was like, how can you do it? So how can you move? Like you can't even really see you move. How come your product, your output is 80% better than everyone else's? And it's so validating for them to be part of the solution rather than typically part of the problem. They don't want to be part of the problem. They want to be part of the solution, and done well. Whether it doesn't matter if it's soft skills or hard skills, people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Okay. And you've got to open those doors to get that feedback so that they can thrive and that so you can thrive as well. And people, if approached honestly, love to talk about their jobs and they love to show you, oh my gosh, this is the stupidest thing and we've done these stop the stupid programs in organizations where it's like, tell us all the stupid things we ask you to do. And then we just click, okay, yep, that's stupid. We're going to stop it. We're going to change it. Oh, it's stupid, but it's really a government regulation, so we have to do it. But let's clean it up a little bit. So they're always your first line of defense and first line of answers as far as I'm concerned.
So as you talk about this, and we've started to touch on, I think, some really intriguing elements here, right? There's this idea of self-reflection and the input that we can get, the humility and self-awareness to acknowledge I could be a better leader, the communication to members of the team, asking for help in that way. Any tips or sort of hard-earned experiential bits of value that you would share that say, hey, listen, as you, a leader, are trying to move through this evolution of your own behaviors, how to make sure that you don't fall off the bandwagon? Because we've all had those summit moments where we hear a leader make a commitment, they're standing on stage, talking to the town hall, but the reality is the truth shows up when nobody's looking or very few people are around, right? It's the hallway conversation, the one-on-one, et cetera. How do you coach a leader to not fall back into the inertia of their past behaviors?
It's I suggest to them to have either peer partners or informal leader partners or even employees that are willing to say, hey, wait a second. You agreed that you weren't going to do X and you just did X again, type of thing. Because most people, self-awareness, I think a lot of times we don't have time for, although it's absolutely critical. So we are always going to default back to we change under pressure. And I think that's where we need those folks to help hold us accountable so that they can see us falling back into our old ways and kind of call us on it and remind us of what we committed to do.
I
Because
think
what's that?
the part under pressure
Yes.
is interesting to me because having done the insights and all those kinds of assessments in the past, so I'm red when I'm not under pressure, and I'm red when I'm under pressure. I'm red all the time. It's my primary color.
Yeah.
But there is a difference between good red and bad red, right?
Right.
And so I think that's where the under pressure part is, like, how do you recognize that you're in a moment of pressure and still do the pausing? Kind of what does that look like?
The willingness to do that.
Yeah.
Because
More looks in the mirror. More free.
the willingness to take it to it's stimulus response, stimulus response, stimulus response. And you it's going to take some time, but you have to step back. I mean, you just have to take that breath and you have to step back, and we spend so much time working for our organizations and delivering for our organizations and getting them results, and we don't not spending any time on ourselves. And I said it earlier, those leaders that want to improve, because not all of them do. But if you've got a leader that's committed to these changes, they're going to start kind of stopping themselves. They're like, oh, here I go again.
Hmm.
Here I go again. I can feel my blood boil. There's a signal.
Yeah, my jaw gets tight when I get
Yeah,
angry. Yeah.
exactly, right? And so there's the signals that they're gonna have to pay attention to, but at first it's gonna be I think it's gonna be hard, but if we have those either peer accountability, informal leader accountability, even employee accountability, depending on your relationship, you can there's no magic button, but it can change over time. And once you get a taste of that, it's gonna start changing. You get a taste of that win, so it's gonna start changing, I think quicker and quicker for you as a leader.
Yeah. To pull Gary on something that you also said before, which is, we get in that moment and we're also expected to have all of the answers as a leader. And so, in the early part of our careers, it's easy enough to say, I'm not sure, I'll get back to you. But we stop using that as a technique as we're leaders. And it's still, maybe we're all here to say, give permission. It's still okay to say, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, yeah, and it has to be because there is no way that every leader can have the answer. And I've managed multi-million-dollar projects, and I don't know how many times I've said, I don't, I wish I could give you more information. I wish I could tell you what the end game is. I wish I had those. I don't. But I can promise you that as soon as I get answers, I'll give them to you as well.
And for me, there's some things that combine into, you know, as the ingredients into a solution recipe,
Mhm.
and they relate somewhat to this idea of pressure and defaulting back into past behaviors. Again, we're conditioned often to think we have to have the answers, and there's a reinforcement, especially early in career when you're a subject matter expert, opportunities are provided, right? So a lot of people rise because they're knowledgeable, they're capable, they have the skill set until they're in an environment where their skill set is not broad enough or rich enough to actually encompass all of the responsibilities of the role. And when we talk in some of the descriptive terms like under pressure or stress, to put a sharp point on that, that could be something has just gone wrong. We have
Mhm.
a product defect. We had a weather event that knocked a factory out. We had a quality issue. We, had bad press, whatever it happens to be.
Mhm.
And this, for me, is where the sort of combination of taking personal responsibility
Mhm.
and sharing that I don't have the answer oftentimes is a good thing because there will be members of the team who might be avoidant of taking accountability. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have people who want to step up. And as a leader, part of the art in those moments of pressure is to be able to share that as an individual, I feel both of those. I'd really love to not be accountable for this quality issue that just went out, from our organization. However, when times are tough, we show how good we are by responding to it. And
Mhm.
helping sort of socialize that across the team to me has always proven fruitful because it
Yes.
again manifests a certain vulnerability and an optimism that together we can get this done. And Julie, I see you nodding your head, so I'm curious how that resonates with your own experiences and what you put into the book.
I mean, you could have written that part of the book. I mean, that's what we need to do. You know, we we can't possibly as leaders have all the answers. It's not humanly possible. As much as our egos would like to think we do, we don't. Okay? We haven't sat in the seats of all the employees. We haven't, sat behind the screens of all the employees, and they're the ones that can help us. And we just need to ask. As long as we've created. Now some employees would love because you're such a jerk. They were like, "Yeah, no, it's all you, baby. It's all you." But once, you know, hopefully that is not the case for your listeners, but they they want things to go as well as you do.
Yeah.
I
I
really
think
think yeah.
I mean, a couple of things in what you both just said. One is leaders are human too. So, like, Gary, you listed off a whole bunch of things that could have gone wrong. Maybe maybe they had a death in their family. Maybe something happened in their
Yeah.
personal life that's
Yep.
stopping how changing how they're showing up. And so, something that I've often coached leaders on is name it. You don't have to tell all the details, but you might just want to name that you're dealing with some heavy stuff and, you're not your best self today. That goes a long way. The other part is, people want to be part of the solution, which is what you're all talking about, but you can't ask people to be part of the solution in a way that's not genuine.
Yes.
Because if you just ask for that feedback and then you go and do it another way anyway, people are going to, number one, stop giving you feedback, but also you're showing that like you did it as an exercise instead of coming from a real place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The soundbite for me on that is when the ask is a task, you've probably missed your window, right? If you're actually asking and looking for information
Mm-hmm.
rather than just tasking somebody in the form of a question to go do what you want them to do, you're going to get a different response. And I think we've all experienced moments where somebody would say, well, we want you to be part of this and feel some ownership over it. So go do X and do it in this way, and then come back and show me that you did it the way I told you to. And, some people probably respond well to being a marionette and having strings pulled, but a lot of folks respond much better if you just say, hey, I'd really like your perspective on how we might solve this problem. What do you think?
Yes.
So I see Kim as, I can see
Hey,
the wheels turning in Kim's mind.
So I'm thinking about, when we make asks as leaders, and this point you talk about in the book and something that resonates well with me, which is clarity. I have a client that I was working with recently that said, well, but I told them. I'm like, you told them one time in a meeting setting.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
talk a little bit more about what you mean, Julie, when you say bring clarity.
I think it's important that we provide guardrails. Okay, as leaders, this is within these guardrails. This is the expectation. This is the output. Let them figure out how to do it within the guardrails, and you don't necessarily have to go any further than that. But if you have those guardrails, then I think people are more likely to perform. Well, I told them. You hear? Well, I told them. I sent them an email, whatever. But you didn't give them the guardrails. When, why, how. What does good look like? Because I think a lot of times we don't explain that to people. And when you put those guardrails and you put those expectations and are more clear in the expectations, take the extra 5. We always have time for rework. We don't necessarily have time to get it done right the
Yeah.
first time.
First time. Yeah.
But I like the guardrails is kind of like decision rights to me, right? Like what decisions can they make? The one that most often I think gets missed is the why,
Mhm.
right? We tell people how, we tell them what, we tell them a deadline, but we don't tell them why. And very often when we're working with teams, we might hear them say, well, so-and-so said to do it. Did you ask so-and-so why they said to do it? Because maybe they have a good reason, but we'd like to understand the real reason and not just because somebody said so, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the one that I think gets skipped the most. And, teams lose the most opportunity by not understanding the why, because maybe they'd come up with a better solution if they understood that.
Yeah. I was training a couple weeks ago, and the guy said, "Did you hear about the ham?" And I knew the ham story, but do you know the ham story? Okay. So it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, and mom's going to cook a ham. She always cuts off both of the ends of the ham. And you say, well, mom, why'd you cut off the ends of the ham? Well, my mom did it. And then you go to grandma, and grandma says, well, my mom did it. Well, it turns out the ovens were so much smaller back in the day that you had to cut the ends of the ham off.
Mhm.
So there was, someone finally asked why. So we have all this waste. And a lot of times it's just this tribal knowledge. Someone figured out that but there was no good why in it. And so finally, the niece asked, well, why, grandma, do I cut
Mhm.
this off? And it was because the oven was much smaller. And
That
it
is
just,
a great anecdotal story to share with
yes, it
people
is,
of
right?
why, to ask why.
Yes. Yeah. Because it just didn't fit. And there's so many in organizations, we pass on this tribal knowledge. When people start asking why, we learn, and then you may have to ask why again, maybe 5 whys,
Mhm.
and then you learn, well, because the equipment was different 10
Mhm.
years ago, or the
Yeah.
system was different. Why do we put, you know, whatever we do? Well,
Mm.
because things were different back in the day, but we haven't changed the process to adjust for the
Yeah.
new equipment.
So
So
no
it's
more
a
because so
process.
and so said so, and no more because we've always done it that way. Everybody should be asking why if you take one thing away from this episode.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
think I think
Well,
it's
and
important, but why can put people on defense? Be careful with your whys, but just I'm trying to understand, why it is we do these things or something. So put yourself in it first. But if you just say, well, why do you do that? Then that tends to throw people off.
Yeah. Fair
and
point.
and again, there's an element there of where, as an individual, do we find ourselves in the context of the team or the enterprise or the organization? Because sometimes an innocent question from someone with positional authority sounds accusatory, uh, right? Whereas if somebody else asks that question, it sounds curious. And I think the another aspect of articulating why, or providing the context and the reasoning behind an assertion of what we need to do, goes back to the fact that humans are emotional social critters. And there's an aspect of being clear in sort of pointing out what needs to be accomplished that I think it also gets a boost in terms of personal commitment from everybody who has to contribute when they
Mhm.
understand the context. There are people out there who are just like, you tell me a task, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And there are other people, and I would count myself as part of this, who are much better when we have that context and we can buy in. And this is where I'm also curious, Julie, about your perspective. Kim and I have talked a lot over the course of the podcast in our conversations and outside the podcast about how change is choice. People choose to join a change agenda or an initiative. And if we don't allow them to make that choice, we're actually compelling them. And a compelled individual is much less productive than somebody who has bought in. Um, so I'll stop there. I don't want it to take too long a turn, but I'm curious how that fits into your experience again, and how you approach your work with leaders.
So we have change fatigue, and you said people choose to be part of change. A lot of times we don't give them that choice.
Mhm.
Correct.
We
That's the issue, right?
Yeah, yeah. We're just like, oh, we're doing this or we're doing that, and we don't give them a choice. And I think that's uh a huge problem, because so many, well, people, I hate change. We every day is change. You have babies, you buy houses, you get married, you get divorced, everything, we get kids, all we change constantly. What we don't like and what we fight against is this, you know, you is not understanding the why behind the change, not working through or navigating the feelings that people may have behind the change, the fear that they may have. I don't know how many projects I've been involved in where they're like, oh, we need to have a change work stream. Well, you guys already did so much work, and it's very late now to bring about the change, but you've got to take people on the journey with you. If you're developing software, make sure that it's not, some engineers and some leaders that are developing the software. Make sure it's the people that are pressing the buttons,
Mhm.
and show them what good looks like in the future. And if you engage people in the discussions early on and let them feel the feels that they're going to feel, because they're fearful for, especially now, fearful for their jobs and those types of things, and give them some insurances, and let them work through those feelings that they have. I think we can be a lot more successful, because we don't give people the choice to change. We change every day in organizations. We just don't bring the people along the right way to let them see the value of what it is we're changing.
So I think two things. Yeah, the episode before this and this one will be 2 episodes in a row that we had people say, "Feel the feelings."
Mhm.
Um, so we got a running theme going. But also, I think combined with the changes choice and change fatigue is I'm gonna take it back to having children, is I can remember when my children were potty training. They're now 16 and 19. They'll die if I'm telling these stories, but they'll probably never watch
They
this.
recently achieved their objective, by the way.
Yes. But I remember their daycare teacher saying, "The reason why kids don't potty train is because it's the only thing they still have control over."
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
so, like, they can choose whether they go sit on the potty or they pee and poop in their pants, and they have control over that, as disgusting as that might sound. And I think that's where the, like, change is choice and change fatigue, right? Like, it's that feeling of losing control all the time.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And some people will
I
opt
think
out.
you've just invented a hashtag around pee your pants. But but to the point that you're making, though, Kim, this idea of my own sense of control and in the context, and this is why I talk about humans being social critters, in the
Hmm.
context of a group dynamic. And, you know, I think if I were using different words, Julie,
Hmm.
to talk about your, hey, change happens all the time and not giving people that opportunity, when we compel someone and drag them along, there's inherently an acknowledgement that there's resistance there. And much of that resistance is rooted in what you just touched on, which is what are they feeling? What are their
Hmm.
anxieties? What's their fear? And if we simply say, ask the question, how are you feeling? Or
Hmm.
what do you fear as we
Hmm.
discuss this?
Hmm.
Taking that moment, and this goes back to something you said very early in the conversation, which I think is important, is taking that moment to pause, acknowledge how people are feeling, let people feel it, and then move on to the task at hand makes
Hmm.
for much greater effectiveness. And, in a very different context, I was just talking with some folks about crisis management and the importance of acknowledging people's emotional response when there's a crisis,
Yes.
because otherwise there's massive distraction while you're trying to solve the problem. And that just makes the crisis feel that much bigger and worse and creates more pressure, right? It's this vicious loop.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel like we've touched on a whole bunch of really good stuff. One
Hmm.
question I'd be curious about, if there was one thing that you would encourage the folks who listen in or watch this podcast to take away or to try, what might that be, from your perspective, that would be a start to their own journey down this path of transformation and evolution?
I think people need to just to pause. I know it sounds so simple, but it's not. It's like, okay, step back. How am I, whether it's pulling out, how am I about to respond right now? Okay. Just right now, how am I about to respond? And if how you're going to respond is could be interpreted wrong, is angry, is um is inappropriate, then either excuse yourself, get in the right headspace, or don't respond right now. Because all too often, like I said, it's stimulus, response. And you're going to go to default. If you just take that breath, they say the breathing and the pausing is power, and go, how am I going to show up?
Yeah.
If it's not how you intend, because how you intend to show up is not necessarily how you show up. Okay. We all have the best intentions every day. Okay. And then under pressure, something happens, your intentions are kind of scrapped and you show up differently. So take that pause. How am I about to show up right now? And then either, either take that breath or step away and respond later.
Mm, two things reflecting on what you just said. One, it's other people who judge how we show up, right? Our intention is what it is, but we
Yeah.
don't get to actually hold up the ratings cards like, at an ice skating competition in the old days.
Yes.
So
I
I'm gonna
think,
caveat that with one thing. So we all see each other on video a lot. And I know there's times where I say something and I might not be judging myself immediately, but I see the facial expression of someone else. And then the whole rest of the day, I'm like, ooh, could I have said that differently? And I do start judging myself. That's the mirror part.
Absolutely. But you're the response. It's the echo. It's the bounce
Yes.
back, because the initial assessment comes from somebody else. And you just, in that case, I love this because you're like, hey, I observed how people responded and now I'm reflecting. I'm curious, Julie, because I do this with some of the leaders I coach. I try to get them to have a gesture that forces the pause. It might be put your hands on the tabletop. It might be pull your ear. Right. In one instance, I talked to a leader and I said, just do me a favor, just touch your nose before you talk. And that worked really well for her.
Oh, that's neat.
Because it was a simple gesture, but it was her pause button.
Yeah.
And it allowed her to decide, yes, I want to show frustration here with some intentionality.
Yes.
Versus, oh, I'm not actually frustrated at this, I'm confused, and redirect and ask something different.
Yeah. I think that's good. I like the idea of the trigger.
Yeah.
So
It takes a little work, but
I think also,
all of this does. It's not easy.
I think that's the daily exercise part that I was mentioning at the beginning, right? Like you have to do this every single day in order to get good at it so that in moments of pressure, you're not reverting back. And so, something that I know I've done in the past is I've had, whether it's a coworker or a friend, and it's like, I'm about to send this message, but I'm sending it to you instead so that you can read it because I know it's not right, but I need to say it out loud to somebody.
Yeah.
I have never
I'm
received a
trying to
message
find a
like
buddy.
that from Kim.
Yeah.
Never.
I tell people just put it in draft.
Yeah.
You know, and I
But don't
never,
accidentally put the 2 on there.
yeah. Oh, a lot of times if you have to write that email, don't ever put 2 on it, and then write the email and then put it in, just save it in draft. I rarely ever go back to those draft emails. I said what I needed to say, and I didn't need it to say
You got it
anything.
out.
I got it out. So just avoid the 2 and stick it in draft.
Yeah.
And then the fun part is to go back and like read your draft emails, and you're like, oh shoot, I can't believe I.
Thank God I never sent that one.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good. We probably all got horror stories about the flaming response that
It's a
did
different
or
kind
did
of
not
book
get
we'll
sent.
all release. Emails I never sent.
Yes. There you go. That would be a good one, right?
Yeah.
Or the ones you send accidentally. I remember sending one to a client when I meant to send one to a peer. That was
Oops. Yeah.
yeah. I have a lot of explaining to do, Lucy. So,
Yeah.
but I just called her and I'm like, I just called her just flat out. It was inappropriate to send that email. I meant it for Ginger. I didn't mean it for you, Donna.
Yeah.
I said I was frustrated. Let's talk about it. You know, and within minutes we were okay again. You know,
Naming it. Powerful.
And showing accountability, taking responsibility for, a glitch. Tons of stuff there. Julie McManus, author of The Leadership Mirror, thank you so much for being with us. This has been a delight. One of the things that we often do is just ask you for a final word. Is there any piece of wisdom or topic that we didn't touch on that you just are like, I wish we would have talked about that?
Someone asked me, I think leadership, your journey never ends. Okay. Someone had said, when am I done? You're never done. You get a new employee, a new experience, a new client, and every day is a growth experience. So don't ever think you're done, because you'll never be done. It's a journey, and just go for the ride.
Love it.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here, Julie.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Kim Scribner, thank you. Julie, thank you. I'm
My
Gary
pleasure.
Lancina. This has been the latest episode of the Fault Line Podcast. Find us wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out on YouTube. And we'll be back soon with more perspective and wisdom from great folks like Julie. And thanks for listening.